The living room was heavy with a silence I'd come to know too well, the kind that settles in after too many lies have been told. I sat on the edge of my old leather armchair, the one stained with memories of bedtime stories and Sunday dinners, watching my son Aaron stand before me. He crossed his arms, his face set in a performance of concern that almost fooled me, almost. "Dad, you're not safe here anymore," Aaron began, his tone gentle but his words rehearsed. "You've had 2 falls this year. The stairs are dangerous. Your blood pressure's up. Dr. Lenz says you need supervision." I studied him, searching for the boy I once knew. But behind the mask of worry, I saw it: calculation, cold ambition, hunger. This wasn't about my safety. It was about control, about what he stood to gain if I stepped aside. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments section where you are listening from. My name is Stephen Walker. I'm 56 years old. I'll never forget the day my son, Aaron, came to me with a concerned look on his face, telling me that I was getting too old to live alone. He said it was for my own good, that I needed to move into an assisted living facility so he could manage my finances and make sure I was taken care of. I was taken aback by his suggestion, but I tried to brush it off as mere concern from a loving son. As I look back, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long and winding road that would ultimately lead to my betrayal. But at the time, I had no idea what was coming. I was too caught up in being a good father, a good provider, and a good person. I've always been a generous person, willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. My family has always been my top priority, and I've done everything in my power to provide for them. My wife, God rest her soul, and I worked hard to give our son every opportunity in life. We sacrificed our own desires and dreams to make sure he had the best possible chance at success. After my wife passed away, I continued to be the rock of the family. I worked hard, invested wisely, and built a comfortable life for myself and my son. Aaron would often come to me for financial help, and I would gladly give it to him. I thought I was helping him get back on his feet, but in hindsight, I realized that I was enabling him. Over the years, I started to notice subtle signs of disrespect from Aaron. He would show up unannounced, expecting me to drop everything to cater to his needs. He would borrow money without paying it back, or worse, without even asking. He would make decisions on my behalf, without consulting me, and then expect me to go along with them. Despite these red flags, I chose to ignore them. I told myself that he was just going through a tough time, that he would eventually come around and appreciate everything I had done for him. But deep down, I knew something was off. I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. As the years went by, Aaron's behavior became more and more erratic. He would get angry with me for no reason, or become dismissive and condescending. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around him, never knowing when he would blow up at me next. One day, I received a call from a financial advisor, asking me to come in for a meeting to discuss my estate planning. I was hesitant at first, but the advisor assured me that it was just a routine checkup to make sure everything was in order. I agreed to meet with him, and as I sat in his office, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The advisor asked me a series of questions about my assets, my will, and my beneficiaries. I answered him honestly, but I couldn't help but feel like he was fishing for something. As I left his office, I noticed a piece of paper on his desk with my name on it. It was a draft of a new will, one that I had not authorized. My heart started racing as I realized that someone had been meddling with my affairs. I didn't know who or why, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. I decided to do some digging, to see if I could uncover what was really going on. As I walked out of the advisor's office, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. I knew that I was on the cusp of something big, something that would change my life forever. But I had no idea what was coming, or how it would affect me. All I knew was that I had to be careful, that I had to watch my back. I had a feeling that someone was out to get me, to take advantage of me. And I was determined to find out who it was, and to stop them before it was too late. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone suspicious. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was letting my imagination get the best of me. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I felt like I was living in a dream that was about to turn into a nightmare. And then, just as I was pulling into my driveway, I saw Aaron's car parked outside my house. He was sitting on the porch, waiting for me. I felt a sense of trepidation wash over me as I realized that he was up to something. I got out of the car and approached him, trying to act calm. "Hey, son," I said, trying to sound casual. "What brings you here today?" He looked up at me, a smug look on his face. "I just wanted to check in on you, Dad," he said. "Make sure you're doing okay." I nodded, trying to play along. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something there that made my blood run cold. It was a look of calculation, of manipulation. And in that moment, I knew that I was in grave danger. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself I was just being paranoid. But as I looked at my son, I knew that I had to be careful. I had to watch my back, because I had a feeling that he was out to get me. And as I stood there, frozen in fear, I realized that my life was about to change forever. I was about to embark on a journey that would take me to the depths of betrayal and back again. And I was not sure if I would ever be the same again. As I stood there, trying to process what was happening, I couldn't help but think about my niece, Cody. She was the daughter of my sister, and she had always been like a daughter to me. I had taken her under my wing, and she had become like a part of my family. I remembered the way she would come to visit me, the way she would listen to me and talk to me like I was a person, not just a wallet. I remembered the way she would make me laugh, the way she would bring joy into my life. And as I stood there, looking at my son, I couldn't help but feel a sense of regret. I regretted the way I had enabled him, the way I had let him take advantage of me. I regretted the way I had ignored the signs, the way I had let him push me around. But most of all, I regretted the way I had neglected Cody. I regretted the way I had pushed her to the side, the way I had let Aaron become the center of my attention. As I stood there, frozen in fear, I knew that I had to make a change. I had to take back control of my life, and I had to make sure that Cody was taken care of. I had to make sure that she was protected, that she was safe from Aaron's manipulation. And as I looked at my son, I knew that I had to be careful. I had to watch my back, because I had a feeling that he was out to get me. But I also knew that I had to be strong, that I had to stand up for myself and for Cody. I took a deep breath, and I steeled myself for what was to come. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was ready to take back my life, and I was ready to make sure that justice was served. As I stood there, looking at my son, I knew that this was just the beginning. This was just the start of a long and winding road, a road that would take me to the depths of betrayal and back again. But I was ready, and I was determined to see it through to the end. And so, with a sense of determination and purpose, I began my journey. I began my journey to take back my life, to protect Cody, and to make sure that justice was served. I began my journey to uncover the truth, to expose Aaron's manipulation, and to bring him to justice. And as I walked into my house, I knew that I was ready for whatever came next. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. I was ready to take back my life, and I was ready to make sure that Cody was safe. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready. I was ready to face whatever came next, and I was ready to emerge victorious in the end. And as I walked into my house, I knew that I would never be the same again. I knew that I would never be able to go back to the way things were before, and I knew that I would never be able to trust my son again. But I also knew that I would be okay. I knew that I would be able to overcome whatever challenges lay ahead, and I knew that I would be able to emerge stronger and wiser in the end. And as I walked into my house, I knew that I was ready to start my journey, a journey that would take me to the depths of betrayal and back again. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Aaron's visit the previous day had left me unsettled, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring out the window at the oak tree I'd planted when Aaron was born. It had grown tall and strong, but somewhere along the way, my relationship with my son had become twisted and gnarled. I decided to call my lawyer, Tom Henderson, who'd been handling my affairs for the past 20 years. When his secretary put me through, Tom's warm voice greeted me. "Stephen. How are you doing, my friend?" "Tom, I need to ask you something," I said, cutting straight to the point. "Has anyone been asking about my will recently? Maybe trying to make changes?" There was a pause on the other end. "That's odd you should ask. Your son Aaron called last week, asking about power of attorney procedures. Said you were getting forgetful and might need help managing things. I told him any changes would need to come directly from you. My blood ran cold. Forgetful. I'd never been sharper. I thanked Tom and hung up, my mind racing. This was worse than I'd thought. That afternoon, I had a doctor's appointment for my annual checkup. As I sat in the waiting room, I noticed Aaron's car in the parking lot. Strange, he hadn't mentioned anything about being here. When the nurse called me back, she seemed surprised. "Mr. Walker. We weren't expecting you today. Your appointment isn't until next month." "What?" "No, I have it written down for today," I said, pulling out my calendar. She checked her computer again. "I'm sorry, but someone called yesterday and rescheduled it. They said you were confused about the dates." My hand started shaking. Someone had called pretending to be me. I apologized for the confusion and left, but not before asking who had called. The receptionist couldn't remember specifically, just that it was a man who said he was calling on my behalf. As I walked to my car, I saw Aaron coming out of the medical building. He spotted me and his face went pale. "Dad? What are you doing here?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, just getting some paperwork for insurance," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Hey, since you're here, we should talk about that assisted living place I mentioned. They have an opening next month." "I'm not interested, Aaron." His face hardened. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly. You're forgetting appointments, you're living alone in that big house. It's not safe." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said, walking past him to my car. That evening, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying every interaction with Aaron over the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Then I remembered, he had a key to my house. He could come and go as he pleased. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do to my own son. I went to the electronics store and bought a small voice-activated recorder. I placed it in my home office, hidden behind some books on the shelf. If Aaron was coming into my house when I wasn't there, I wanted to know what he was doing. 3 days later, I had my answer. I'd gone out for my morning walk, making sure to take my usual route past the park. When I returned, I checked the recorder. My heart sank as I heard the familiar sound of my front door opening, followed by footsteps. Then I heard Aaron's voice, and he wasn't alone. "The old man's getting more stubborn," Aaron said. "We need to move faster." "You said this would be easy," a woman's voice replied. I recognized it as Melissa, Aaron's girlfriend. "You said he'd go along with it." "He will. I just need to document more evidence of his decline. I've been taking photos of his medicine cabinet, making it look disorganized. I've been moving things around the house so he thinks he's losing them. Hell, I even called his doctor to reschedule appointments so he'd look confused." "And the financial advisor?" Melissa asked. "Already on board. Once we get power of attorney, we can start liquidating assets. The house alone is worth over $1 million. Plus his investment portfolio, savings, we're looking at close to $3 million total." I had to sit down. My legs felt like jelly. My own son was gaslighting me, trying to make me think I was losing my mind, also he could steal my money. "What about after?" Melissa asked. "Once he's in the home. State minimum care. Medicaid will cover it once we've drained his accounts. He'll be fine, just modest. It's not like he needs all that money anyway. He's old." I heard them moving around, probably looking through my papers. Then Aaron spoke again. "I found a place that's perfect. Sunshine Gardens. It's adequate. And the director is flexible about documentation if you know what I mean. A few thousand under the table and they'll swear he's been showing signs of dementia for months." "When do we make the move?" Melissa asked. "Soon. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week about the power of attorney papers. Once we have those, we can have him evaluated by a friendly doctor who'll declare him incompetent. After that, it's smooth sailing." I heard them leave, and I sat in my chair for what felt like hours. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could. This was my son, my flesh and blood, the boy I'd raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. And he was planning to lock me away and steal everything I'd worked for. But as the initial shock wore off, something else took its place. Anger. Cold, calculated anger. I wasn't some helpless old man. I was Stephen Walker, and I'd built my fortune through intelligence and determination. If my son wanted to play games, I'd show him how the game was really played. The first thing I did was change the locks on my house. I told the locksmith I'd lost my keys, and I needed everything changed immediately. I also installed a security system with cameras, making sure to cover every entrance. Next, I called Tom Henderson and scheduled an appointment for the next day. I didn't tell him why, just that it was urgent. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Aaron as a little boy, how he'd run to me when he was scared, how proud I'd been at his graduation, how I'd always imagined leaving everything to him someday. But that boy was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a bank account to be emptied. The next morning, I met with Tom in his office. I told him everything, the recording, Aaron's plans, the whole sordid scheme. Tom's face grew darker with every word. "Stephen, I'm so sorry," he said when I finished. I don't even have words. I need to protect myself, Tom. And I need to do it fast. First things first, Tom said, pulling out a legal pad. We need to make sure Aaron can't get power of attorney. I'm going to draft a document explicitly stating that you're of sound mind and that no one has authority to make decisions on your behalf. We'll get it notarized and filed with the court. What about my will? I asked. Tom leaned back in his chair. That's entirely up to you. You can change your beneficiaries at any time, as long as you're competent to do so. I thought about Cody, my niece. She'd called just last week to check on me, as she did every week. She never asked for money, never pushed me to do anything I didn't want to do. She just cared. I want to change it, I said. Everything goes to Cody. Tom nodded. We can do that. What about Aaron? Do you want to leave him anything? Sometimes people leave a small amount to show they weren't forgotten, makes it harder to contest. I thought about it for a moment. $1, I said. So he knows I didn't forget him. I remembered exactly who he is. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Tom was thorough, making sure every asset was accounted for, every document was properly filed. He also suggested I get a formal cognitive evaluation from an independent doctor to have on record, proving I was of sound mind. Aaron's going to know something's up when he can't get power of attorney, Tom warned. Let him, I said. I'm done playing defense. Over the next few days, I quietly went about securing my life. I changed all my financial passwords, put fraud alerts on all my accounts, and even opened a new bank account that Aaron didn't know about, transferring a significant amount of money there. I also called Cody and invited her to lunch. She was delighted and drove down from Charlotte the next day. As we sat in my favorite restaurant, I watched her face light up as she told me about her job as a teacher, about the kids she was helping, about her plans to buy a small house. Uncle Stephen, are you okay? She asked suddenly. You seem different. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said. Just thinking about the future. Well, don't think too hard, she laughed. You've got plenty of good years left. If only she knew how hard someone was trying to take those years away from me. As I drove home from lunch, I felt a strange sense of peace. Yes, I'd lost a son, but I'd been reminded that I still had family who truly cared about me. The game Aaron was playing was cruel, but he'd already lost. He just didn't know it yet. That evening, my phone rang. It was Aaron. Dad, we need to talk, he said, his voice tight. I went to see Tom Henderson today about helping you with your affairs, and he said you'd put some kind of block on it. That's right, I said calmly. Dad, this is ridiculous. You need help. You're being paranoid and... Aaron, I interrupted. I'm perfectly fine. And I'll continue to manage my own affairs. This isn't over, he said before hanging up. No, I thought, it's just beginning. But I was ready. I had my strategy in place, my defenses secured. Now it was time to wait and watch as Aaron's carefully constructed plan crumbled around him. He thought he was hunting a weak old man. He was about to learn that this old man still had teeth. The days that followed were a masterclass in cat and mouse. Aaron continued to push, convinced that his plan was still on track, while I maintained a facade of calm, all the while orchestrating my counterattack. The first sign that Aaron was getting desperate was when he started showing up unannounced at my house again. He'd knock on the door, sometimes calling ahead, trying to catch me off guard. But I was ready. I'd either not answer, or if I did, I'd be perfectly fine, perfectly lucid, and perfectly dismissive of his concerns. One afternoon, he arrived as I was gardening. He stormed up to me, his face red with frustration. "Dad, stop being stubborn. You need help, and I'm the only one who cares enough to provide it." I looked up at him, wiping the sweat from my forehead, and smiled. "Aaron, I'm 56 years old. I've managed my life just fine without your interference for decades. Why start now?" He spluttered, trying to come up with a response, but I cut him off. "Besides, I have Cody visiting next week. She's always been more concerned about my well-being than you are." That was a jab, and he knew it. Aaron had always felt overshadowed by Cody's close relationship with me. He'd often complained that I spoiled her, that I favored her over him. Now, I was rubbing it in his face. The next day, I received a call from Tom Henderson. "Stephen, Aaron just tried to get a new power of attorney document drawn up at another law firm. The lawyer smelled something fishy and called me to verify your intentions." I chuckled. Good for him. What's Aaron's next move? He's getting agitated. Threatening to sue you for elder abuse or some nonsense like that. But here's the important part, I managed to get a copy of the draft document he was trying to submit. It includes some interesting language. What kind of language? Evidence of your declining mental health. He lists instances where you've supposedly forgotten things, made poor financial decisions. It's all fabricated, of course, but if he gets this in front of a judge, it could get messy. I nodded to myself. Time to stir the pot. "Tom, I want you to send that document to me. And then, let's make a little addition of our own." The plan was taking shape. I spent the next 48 hours gathering evidence of Aaron's own misdeeds, bank statements showing how he'd overdraft accounts I helped him with, emails where he'd promised to repay loans but never did, and even a few text messages where he'd admitted to borrowing money from me without permission. Tom and I worked tirelessly to build a case, not against Aaron for his betrayal, but against his character. We were preparing for the inevitable moment he'd try to take me to court, claiming I was incompetent. And then, the perfect opportunity landed in my lap. Aaron, in his arrogance, decided to confront me directly at my house. He arrived one evening, Melissa in tow, thinking they could bully me into signing the power of attorney. I let them in, feigning confusion and weakness, playing the part of the frail old man they'd convinced themselves I was. Melissa started the act, cooing and fussing over me, asking if I was okay, if I needed water. Aaron jumped right in, pulling out the document and a pen. "Dad, just sign this, and we'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry about a thing." I looked at the paper, pretending to squint. "What's this say?" "I don't see my glasses." Aaron guided my hand to the pen, but just as he was about to make me sign, I accidentally knocked over the glass of water Melissa had brought me. It spilled all over the document, rendering it useless. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, feigning distress. Aaron's face turned beet red. "Seriously, Dad? You're doing this on purpose." Melissa tried to intervene, but I waved her off. "I think I need to lie down. This is all too much for me." As they helped me, or so they thought, to my bedroom, I made sure to accidentally leave my phone on the coffee table, the voice recorder app still running. Their conversation in the living room was priceless. "This is ridiculous," Melissa hissed. "He's playing us. We just need to get him to the doctor," Aaron whispered back. "Once the evaluation says he's not competent, we'll have the upper hand." "And what if he figures out what we're doing?" Melissa asked, her voice laced with doubt. "He won't," Aaron sneered. "He's too far gone." I smiled to myself, lying on the bed. Oh, but I was very much in control. The next morning, I called Tom and shared the recording. His laughter echoed through the phone. "Stephen, you're a natural. This is gold. Now, let's get this to the authorities, Anne." "Not yet," I interrupted. "We're not done. I want Aaron to think he's still in the driver's seat. Let's give him enough rope to hang himself. Tom understood. We decided to let Aaron continue his charade, believing he was one step away from victory. Meanwhile, we quietly built our arsenal. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I received an unexpected call from the director of Sunshine Gardens, the assisted living facility Aaron had chosen for me. "Mr. Walker, I'm so glad I reached you. Your son Aaron has been in contact with us, discussing arrangements for your stay. However, we've noticed some discrepancies in the paperwork he provided." I played dumb, asking what kind of discrepancies. "Well, it seems the financials he's submitting don't match what we have on file from your accounts. And to be frank, some of the medical records he's provided look altered." I thanked her for her honesty and promised to look into it. Then I called Tom. "It's time," I said. "Get the police involved. I want Aaron picked up for attempted fraud and elder abuse." Within 24 hours, Aaron and Melissa were arrested at their apartment. The police found stacks of forged documents, fake medical records, and a detailed plan to drain my accounts. The news spread like wildfire through Raleigh. Friends, family, and even acquaintances reached out, shocked and appalled by Aaron's actions. Cody was the first to call, tears in her voice. "Uncle Stephen, I'm so proud of you. You're safe now, and justice will be served." The day of Aaron's bail hearing arrived. I attended, flanked by Tom and Cody. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Aaron, dressed in a suit, looked confident, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted nervously between me and the prosecutor. The judge reviewed the evidence, the recordings, the forged documents, the bank statements. When he finished, he denied bail, remanding Aaron to custody until trial. As we left the courtroom, Aaron's eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, I saw the boy I once knew, the one who'd run to me for comfort. But it was a fleeting glimpse. The man standing before me now was a stranger, consumed by greed and entitlement. "You'll pay for this, Dad," he mouthed, as the officers led him away. I smiled. "I've already paid, Aaron. The price was your trust. And that's something no amount of money can ever buy back." The media storm that followed was intense. Local news stations picked up the story, beloved businessman Foyle's son's desperate plot for inheritance. I became an unlikely hero, a symbol of resilience against elder abuse. But I knew the real victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in the satisfaction of outsmarting Aaron, of protecting what was mine, and of ensuring Cody's future was secure. Tom called me the day after the arrest. "Stephen, your new will is finalized. Cody is now the sole beneficiary of your estate. And just for kicks, I added a clause, Aaron gets that $1 we discussed. But there's more. If he's convicted, he'll forfeit any claim to your assets entirely." I chuckled. Perfect. Let him contest it from jail. The trial loomed, and with it, the final reckoning. Aaron's lawyers would try to spin the story, to paint me as the villain, but the evidence was irrefutable. The recordings, the documents, the testimony from the assisted living director, all of it pointed to one undeniable truth: Aaron had tried to destroy me for profit. As I sat in my garden, watching the sun set over the oak tree I'd planted all those years ago, I felt a deep sense of peace. The tree had weathered storms, grown stronger with each passing year. So had I. I thought about Aaron, locked away, facing the consequences of his actions. I thought about Cody, who'd soon inherit not just my wealth but the knowledge that she'd been loved and prioritized. And I thought about myself, a man who'd refused to be a victim. The journey had been brutal, but I'd emerged not just unscathed, but triumphant. I realized that sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in forgiveness, but in standing firm against those who seek to break you. The trial would come, and with it, closure. But for now, I savored this moment, the taste of justice, the warmth of the sun, and the knowledge that I'd rewritten my own destiny. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I leaned back in my chair, a quiet smile on my lips. The final act was yet to come, but I was ready. Bring it on, Aaron. Bring it on. The anticipation of the trial hung in the air like a challenge, a final confrontation that would seal Aaron's fate. I was prepared for every question, every accusation, every desperate attempt to shift the blame. But deep down, I knew Aaron's greatest punishment wasn't the prison sentence looming over him. It was the realization that he'd lost everything, my trust, my love, and my legacy. The money, the house, the business, all of it would soon belong to Cody, the daughter he'd always resented. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I whispered a single word: justice. Tomorrow would bring the trial, and with it, the world would see Aaron Walker for who he truly was, a man consumed by greed, destroyed by his own ambition. But for now, I slept soundly, my dreams untroubled by the ghosts of what could have been. The game was over. I had won. And as the darkness enveloped me, I smiled, knowing that the best was yet to come. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed, ready to face whatever the day would bring. I knew the trial would be grueling, but I was prepared. I had Tom by my side, and together, we would dismantle Aaron's defenses, piece by piece. As I got dressed, Cody called me, her voice filled with excitement. "Uncle Stephen, I've been thinking. After all this is over, I want to visit you more often. Maybe even move closer." My heart swelled with emotion. "I'd like that, sweetie. We'll make it happen." The trial was scheduled for 9 a.m. Tom picked me up at 8, and we arrived at the courthouse early. The media was already swarming the entrance, cameras and microphones at the ready. "Mr. Walker, can you tell us how you're feeling today?" one reporter asked. I smiled, looking directly into the camera. "I'm feeling vindicated. Today, the truth comes to light. Today, justice is served." The courtroom was packed. Aaron's friends, distant relatives, and even some of my own acquaintances filled the rows, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. Cody sat in the front row, holding my sister's hand. She gave me a reassuring nod as I took my seat. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. The prosecutor, a sharp woman with years of experience, laid out the case against Aaron with precision. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence will show that Aaron Walker attempted to defraud his own father, Stephen Walker, of millions of dollars. He forged documents, manipulated medical records, and orchestrated a scheme to declare his father mentally incompetent, all for financial gain." Aaron's lawyer, a slick, silver-haired man, stood up, his voice dripping with condescension. "My client is a devoted son, misunderstood and misrepresented. Stephen Walker, due to his advancing age, became increasingly paranoid and delusional. Aaron merely tried to help him." The first witness was the director of Sunshine Gardens. She testified about the suspicious documents Aaron had submitted, the altered financials, and the urgency he displayed in getting Stephen Walker moved in. Next up was Melissa, Aaron's girlfriend. She took the stand, her voice trembling, but the prosecutor quickly exposed her lies. Text messages, emails, and even bank records proved she'd been deeply involved in the scheme, profiting from it alongside Aaron. The final witness was me. As I took the stand, Aaron's eyes locked onto mine, a mix of anger and desperation burning in their depths. I met his gaze calmly, unflinchingly. "Mr. Walker, can you describe your relationship with your son?" the prosecutor asked. I took a deep breath, recounting our history, the sacrifices I'd made, the trust I'd given, the betrayal I'd uncovered. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as I played the recordings, Aaron's voice filling the room, condemning him with his own words. The cross-examination was brutal. Aaron's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, but I stood firm. "I did what any father would do to protect himself," I said. "I outsmarted my son because I refused to be a victim." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous: Aaron Walker was guilty on all counts, attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. The sentencing would come later, but the courtroom erupted in a mixture of gasps and applause. Cody rushed to hug me, tears streaming down her face. "It's over, Uncle Stephen. It's finally over." Aaron, handcuffed and flanked by officers, glared at me one last time. For an instant, I saw a flicker of regret, but it was too late. The damage was done. As we left the courtroom, the media swarmed me once more. "Mr. Walker, how does it feel to have justice?" I looked up at the sky, feeling the warm sun on my face. "It feels like freedom. Not just for me, but for my family. Today, I ensured that my legacy goes to someone who deserves it, someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I have." The days that followed were a blur of interviews, statements, and finalizing the estate. Tom ensured every legal detail was in place, securing Cody's future irrevocably. The sentencing hearing arrived, and Aaron stood before the judge once more. This time, there was no defiance, only tears and pleas for mercy. The judge was unmoved. "Aaron Walker, your actions were premeditated, heartless, and targeted the most vulnerable person in your life, your father. You showed no remorse until the evidence crushed you. I sentence you to 7 years in state prison, with restitution orders to repay the funds you attempted to steal." The courtroom fell silent. Aaron's head dropped, his body shaking with sobs. Melissa, seated in the back, wept uncontrollably. I watched it all, emotionless. There was no satisfaction, no joy, just a deep, abiding peace. The system had worked. Justice had been served. As I exited the courthouse for the final time, Cody clung to my arm. "Thank you, Uncle Stephen," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Your family, Cody. Blood or not, you're all I have left who matters." We walked into the sunlight, leaving the darkness of Aaron's betrayal behind. The oak tree in my garden stood tall, a reminder of resilience, of growth, of new beginnings. And as we drove home, Cody asked, "Uncle Stephen, what's next?" I smiled, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. "Next, we rebuild. We invest in each other, in ourselves. We live." The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, I was no longer alone. And with Cody by my side, I knew that no matter what life threw our way, we'd face it together, stronger and wiser. The darkness had receded, replaced by a brilliant, golden light. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and let the warmth wash over me. Justice. Freedom. Family. What more could a man ask for? The morning after the sentencing, I awoke to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, a melody I hadn't fully appreciated in months. The weight that had pressed on my chest for years seemed to lift, replaced by a strange, quiet clarity. I sat up in bed, my gaze drifting to the oak tree visible through the glass. Its leaves, once brittle with autumn's chill, now bore the vibrant green of spring. Life, I realized, had a way of healing even the deepest wounds. Cody was waiting for me in the kitchen, a mug of coffee in hand. She'd moved into the guest house last week, insisting she needed to be close during the final stages of the trial. Her presence was a comfort, a reminder that not all bonds could be severed by betrayal. "Morning, Uncle Stephen," she said, smiling as I entered. "Sleep well?" "As well as I can, given the circumstances," I admitted, joining her at the table. She studied me for a moment, her eyes sharp but kind. "You don't look like someone who's just won a battle." "It's not over yet," I said, though even to my own ears, the words felt hollow. Aaron was in prison, his schemes unraveled, his allies scattered. Melissa had vanished from public view, her reputation in tatters after testimony revealed her role in the fraud. But victory had a bitter aftertaste. I'd lost not just a son, but the illusion of family as an unshakable bond. The days following the trial blurred into a routine of finalizing details, settling accounts, transferring assets to Cody, and ensuring Aaron's legal team couldn't exploit any loopholes. Tom handled most of it, but I insisted on overseeing the most critical steps. One afternoon, while sorting through old papers in my study, I stumbled upon a photograph of Aaron and me at his high school graduation. He was beaming, his arms slung casually around my shoulders, while I clutched his diploma, proud and happy. Back then, he'd seemed like the brightest part of my life. I set the photo down, my throat tightening. Grief is a fickle thing, it doesn't arrive on schedule. It creeps in during quiet moments, when you're least prepared. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid a familiar solace, and stared at the fire crackling in the hearth. Cody found me there later, the photo still in my hand. She didn't speak, just sat beside me, her warmth seeping into my side. After a long silence, she said, "He was loved once, you know. Even if he stopped loving himself." I looked at her, surprised. "You don't hate him?" "Hate is exhausting," she replied. "And he's already punishing himself. All we can do is make sure he doesn't drag anyone else down with him." Her words struck me like a thunderclap. I'd been so focused on my own pain, my own sense of betrayal, that I hadn't considered Aaron's state of mind. But Cody was right. His choices had consequences, but his soul, what remained of it, would have to find its own path. 2 weeks after the sentencing, I received a letter from Aaron. Dear Dad. I don't expect you to read this, or to care. But I need to say it out loud, even if it's to a wall. I was wrong. Every step of the way. You gave me everything, opportunities, love, a home, and I threw it all away for greed. For what? Money? Power? It's all meaningless now. I've lost everything that mattered. I hope you can find peace. Whatever happens next, I wish you well. Aaron. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling a pang of something I couldn't name. Regret? Pity? It didn't matter. The letter was a closure of sorts, not for me, but for him. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer, next to the graduation photo. Melissa's fate, meanwhile, had unraveled quickly. Her family disowned her, and her former friends avoided her. She'd lost her job at the gallery, and rumors swirled that she'd been involved in other shady dealings with Aaron. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to a small town hours away, working under an assumed name at a diner. But I didn't dwell on her. My energy was better spent elsewhere. With Cody's help, I established the Walker Family Foundation, dedicated to supporting elderly individuals at risk of financial exploitation. We partnered with local agencies to provide legal aid, financial literacy workshops, and housing assistance. The first project, a community center in Raleigh, opened on my birthday. Cody gave a speech at the ceremony, her words heartfelt and humble. My uncle taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch. This center is his legacy, a testament to resilience, compassion, and the belief that no one should ever feel alone. As I watched her, I felt a surge of pride. She'd always been the light in my life, even when I'd failed to see it. Aaron's prison term was without incident, though he refused to see me during visits. I didn't push. Time, I'd learned, was the greatest teacher. On the 5th anniversary of my wife's death, Cody and I visited her grave. The headstone, etched with her name and the dates of her life, stood as a quiet monument to love. I think she'd be proud of you, Uncle Stephen, Cody said, her voice soft. I hope so, I replied. But I think she'd be even prouder of you. We sat there for a long time, the wind rustling the grass around us. It was a peaceful moment, unmarred by regret or resentment. The final twist came unexpectedly. One evening, as I was reviewing the Foundation's latest report, I noticed an anonymous donation, $50,000, under the Other category. The note attached was brief. To help others, as you've helped me. A.W. I showed it to Cody. She raised an eyebrow. Do you think it's from him? Probably, I said, though the handwriting didn't match Aaron's. Still, the sentiment resonated. Even in his darkest hour, he'd remembered the values I'd tried to instill. Cody smiled. Maybe there's hope for him after all. I didn't reply. Hope was a fragile thing, easily broken. But it was also a choice. As the years passed, I grew content in ways I hadn't anticipated. The house, once a prison of memories, became a sanctuary. Cody and I traveled, volunteered, and built a life that felt authentically ours. Aaron's name rarely crossed my lips, but when it did, it was without anger. I'd learned to separate the man from the mistakes, to forgive without excusing. The oak tree outside my window continued to thrive, its branches stretching toward the sky. It reminded me that growth doesn't require perfection, only persistence. On my 80th birthday, Cody handed me an envelope. Inside was a new will, updated to reflect our shared vision for the foundation. You're still in there, she said, laughing. But so am I. And so are all the people we've helped. I hugged her, my eyes filling with tears. Thank you, Cody. For everything. And thank you, she whispered. For choosing to heal, instead of hiding. The story of Stephen Walker wasn't one of tragedy, but of transformation. He'd lost much, a son, a sense of security, the illusion of control, but he'd gained something far more valuable, wisdom. In the end, justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about redemption, for oneself and for others. And as Stephen stood on the porch that final evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he knew he'd found it. The past could never be erased, but it could be outgrown. And in that growth, there was peace. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments, I'd love to hear from you.